Burger, how are you?
Doing great today. Thank you for having me. How
You-
about you?
I'm doing excellent. I'm making a choice before I get out of bed, Kerry. Before my feet hit the ground, I make a deliberate intention to have a great day. Now, does always come out that turn out that way? No, of course not. But
Oh, I love living with intention. I'm trying to do that more myself.
yeah, deliberate intention makes a difference in the entire day. So that's my first
Mhm.
thing before I grab the phone, before I do everything else, in the bed, giving thanks for gratitude. So that's where I'm at. I look at your notes here. I have some notes on you. I don't know where to start with you. I mean, you were in the 25 years in the corporate world prior to your being a certified life coach. Okay,
Mhm.
so tell people, what are you doing? I mean, you have a lot to share, so let's get going with that.
What am I doing presently?
With people, you're certified life
Okay.
coach. Yeah, let's talk about
Yeah.
that.
It's kind of always been my calling. Even when I was younger, I was kind of a peer counselor, and when I lived in New York City in the corporate world, I was working in women battered shelters, and so I've always had a very big heart and a lot of empathy. And then also through my own struggles through childhood and things that I had, I learned a lot about working through pain versus sitting in it and making ourselves suffer more, right? So, what I have gotten into is coaching and helping women. I do have a few men clients, but primarily women that are in toxic relationships. Their partner is has a lot of narcissistic traits, and so some have been in this cycle of abuse, this cycle of, from the love bombing to the devaluing to discarding to hoovering, back and forth for 35 years. And what I do is I work closely with them because the pain that they're going through is hard. They've been in autopilot, even if they're in a relationship just for a year, that have really gotten sucked into the, you know, some people, even doctors have said it's kind of like an addiction because it's the real highs, the real lows of the constant inconsistency in the relationship. Going through the emotional abuse, psychological abuse, physical abuse, financial abuse is a tough one. So we work on healing, becoming aware of what the truth is, not living in a false narrative of what we hoped they would be, or if we worked hard, maybe we can make them change. Of really becoming aware of what the actually is going on, and from that we figure out tools how to work through it and really rebuild ourselves and find ourselves again. Because sometimes those relationships just flatten us, and we really lose who we are.
Yeah, being this is Mental Health Awareness Month, I've had a few guests on this podcast,
Mm-hmm.
females, and they're talking about the same exact thing you're sharing with us right now. And Lisa Daly is a best-selling author, and she shared a lot about this narcissistic traits, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my question, and I flat out asked her, so I'm going to ask you something, Lisa. Do women get involved with these type of men because they feel they can change them? And she flat out said yes. It's almost like a fixer upper. I'm going to ask you the same question. Your clients come to you, they're sharing their life story with you. Why are they getting involved? I think you touched on it a little earlier, the highs and the rush, right? But why are they
Right.
getting involved with this type of person?
A lot of times you don't know in the beginning. These people can have the most charisma. They can make you feel like you are, when you get love bombed, they can say things. I've never met somebody that made me feel so good. You're my soulmate. You are everything I wanted. No, I never met anybody like you. And you get pulled in because you're feeling so good, right? They didn't sign up for this. They're usually, they're usually people. There's a type of person that these people with a lot of narcissistic traits get attracted to is highly empathetic. People that have a golden heart, people that are kind, people that give people second chances because they believe in them, right? That's the type of person I've always been. And it's not like I signed up for it. It's that you do that. And then once you get involved, you start think they are master manipulators, especially if you get somebody that's covert, that you don't even realize how much you're being manipulated, or their tactics or how they're controlling you, that you can get so pulled into it that you don't even realize it, and that you start blaming yourself. It's part of the cycle, right? Of maybe if I cleaned the house more, he would love me. Maybe if I did this, have a better meal, he would love me more. Maybe it's me that he's so mad all the time, right? And so good at getting back to it. Yeah, they think that we can fix them if I try harder. But sometimes that fixing part of us can lead to childhood trauma also, right? That's what it did with me, with my father. I had a very successful businessman, alcoholic, narcissistic dad, right? And as an early child, I learned if I'm quiet and not present, then maybe he won't explode. If I try to do everything and be overworker, he'll leave me alone. So sometimes we do pick up those patterns because it's what we learned as a kid. And what we did as a child doesn't always work in adulthood, right? And so it can go different ways. It can be from what we've learned in patterns from generational trauma. It can go, some people are just born with a lot of empathy, feeling a lot of feelings. So it is part that we believe that we can fix them, but it's also part of survival mode. You're doing anything you can to try to make it work.
Okay. You said a lot there, and there's a lot that I want to really get into.
There's tons. I mean, this whole thing is huge.
I want to get into this. So the first thing I'm going to ask you is that,
sure.
You have a lot of experience, not only with your own personal life, but you have experience with clients coming to you and sharing their stories with you. Kerry, listen, there has to be a common thread, right? So if you were to say right now, listen, to all women listening to this, here's what I'm going to suggest to you. There has to be a test, some type of a checklist. Am I dating? Am I involved with a narcissist? Is that fair to say that there could be, with all the experience, your knowledge right now, the person's about to walk into this mind fuck? What is it about that you could share right now to somebody listening that says, look, here's your checklist. And if they fall short, get out before it gets too deep and too late. Is that, am I too logical in this?
No, it's what I am aware of now, right? If I was aware of that years ago, I never would have done those patterns in my early ages, in my 20s and my 30s. Never. But we weren't aware because nobody spoke about this, right? We kind of just, I learned to tolerate unacceptable behavior as a kid. So in relationships, that's what I was doing. But the biggest thing is, first of all, trust that gut feeling. Okay. Don't ever second guess it. If you get that gut feeling that somebody's not right, they're not right. The next I'd say is patterns. Somebody does something that is wrong once. Okay. Take note of it. Twice, that is a big red flag. 3 times, that's a pattern. Get the heck out.
Yeah.
It is. It's a pattern, right? We need to be aware of it, and we need to learn what these red flags are, right? How do you feel if you meet somebody? How do you feel when you leave them? Do you feel drained? Do you feel exhausted? Do you feel uncomfortable? That is our bodies know so much more before it even goes to our brain. It really does. And we need to start paying attention to that, right? But also, how do they treat when you're out at the restaurant? How are they treating the waitress or the waiter? Look for patterns like that. Are they condescending? Do they put you down? Do they do the blame game? Do they not take responsibility and accept anything, if they do something wrong? All huge red flags. Where the patterns with my clients really come out of textbook, from all the psychology textbook, from doing Dr. Ramani's workshops to, she's amazing, one of the leaders of this, these type of relationships, is that all of these people with narcissistic traits, they can be mild, medium, extreme. It's right from the textbook. Even though we all have our own story, it's amazing how many similarities are really cookie cut of what they do. And we need to accept those patterns, because what happens is when it gets to be like an addiction, right? The highs and lows. And when they're making us feel good, we're releasing the endorphins. We're releasing this feel good. And then they bomb us and we feel depressed and we're feeling lousy. And that's making us want more. And then they might give us a little breadcrumb of attention one day that we're all suddenly feeling good. So there has been proof that these become like addictive person excuse me, addictive traits that we're wanting it. And that's why it makes it so heartbreaking, the trauma bonds. It is so possible. But what I do with a lot of people is make a truth list. And a truth list is facts. And when you're feeling ungrounded and you're getting confused in cognitive dissonance, where you're getting mixed messages, go to your truth list, because that's what they really are. We so much go where we hope they would be, or where we hope they would turn into, and we live in that area, and that keeps us stuck in the trauma bonds and keeps us stuck in the pain, and then it doesn't even allow us to make boundaries and set boundaries.
You
So I
have,
don't know if that answers. I gave you a lot
you
for
did.
for a
No, that's
question,
good. That's good.
but it's very broad. It's not a simple question to answer.
Sure, no. I'm taking notes as you talk. So I made the analogy.
Sure.
I made the analogy the other day when I was talking to one of the other guests, and I said, I've been to Yellowstone National Park. And it takes me back there. I use the same example. When you go in Yellowstone National Park, there's signs everywhere. Don't feed the bears.
Oh,
Don't feed
yeah.
the wildlife. There's signs, but you still see people doing it anyway. Regardless of the signs, they're going to still do it. And I said, just like your checklist here, if somebody has a checklist in front of them and, oh, yeah, you fail, and you still go back into it, there's a lesson that has to be learned, but why wait until it's too late to learn that lesson? What you're saying is that have your checklist ahead of time, and then if
Yeah.
you're not matching it, if things don't look or smell right, get the fuck, don't stay
Exactly.
in it, right?
And I think, 10 years ago, we didn't talk about this, right? There wasn't really awareness. Even, you'll hear a lot of doctors talk about even teaching psychology. It was, on narcissism or narcissism personality disorder, there wasn't deep dive talk about it. So the beautiful thing is now is that we're becoming aware. We are educating ourselves so we don't allow this to happen. So we stand up for ourselves. So we put our foot down. We draw that line in the sand that I'm not going to take anymore. And what gets hard is once we get sucked in, because they have charisma. Some of them have amazing personalities, amazing charm, makes you feel so good, right? That you just want more. And that's why sometimes, people, when they get out of the toxic relationships, I'll even have them write a list of what was unhealthy, because we need to now learn what a healthy relationship is. We don't know that a lot of times coming out of that, because when we get into a healthy relationship, it feels boring at times, because where's the high? Where's the low? Where's that? Oh my gosh, that intensity. But what we really need to learn is love isn't that high and low. That's part of the abusive cycle, right? Love is consistent. Love is, the warmth, the support, the respect, the being there for each other, good communication. So when we have that comfort, that could be a new comfort for a lot of people. That feels different because it's not what they're used to.
It feels flat. So
Yeah.
what you just said there brings me to my next question. The next question is the payoff for the male, because I'm guessing the percentage is more females get hit with this than males, correct?
No, I know it goes. I mean, there's a lot of female narcissistic. A lot of people grow up with a narcissistic mom. I have a lot of clients that have had narcissistic moms. So it goes both ways. What I work with, as I said, 99% is women in these situations,
The
but
reason
it does go.
it goes both ways, right? Okay, but the reason I'm asking you that is because on IG and TikTok and the post, I haven't seen, maybe they're out there, I just haven't seen the male continues posting how bad that woman treated him and how he was involved with the narcissist. But there's plenty of the women who are saying they got involved, they got burned, they got treated like shit
Oh, yeah.
by this guy. It's more prevalent coming from the female than it is the male.
Right.
Yeah?
Yeah. Very true.
Okay, so then the next question I have for you is, what is the payoff for a guy? If I'm going to get involved with a woman and mind fuck her, torture her mentally, even verbally and physically, what's the payoff?
Well, when it comes to somebody that has a lot of narcissistic traits, the number one thing they want is control.
That's what I
You know.
have right here.
Yep.
I wrote it down.
Yep.
Serena. Control right here. I said, watch her
Well,
answer. You
that's what they
control.
want.
Yeah.
They want somebody they can control. They want somebody they feel superior of. A lot of times they have very, very insecure, they feel very insecure about themselves. So to feel superior, to feel above people, that's their number one thing is control, and that's why they manipulate. That's why they blame.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they don't do that, right? And one common term you'll hear is when they do that, and you have somebody with a lot of empathy that gives to them, that's feeding them the narcissistic supply, right? They know when they hurt you, but sometimes it's so ingrained in them, they might not know every single second, but
Mm-hmm.
they do definitely know.
It's a very selfish act.
Extreme.
It's all selfish, right?
Very.
So, as their coach, life coach, you're certified life coach, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, as their life coach, when they come to you and say, "I'm involved," how do you tell them? What's their exit strategy, Kerry? How do you start the exit strategy? Because once you're in, it's going to be difficult. It's not going to be easy to just walk out. So there has to be an exit plan strategy. What is it that you're suggesting to these women to get out, or men?
Well, we start off kind of gentle because a lot of people don't even know they're in an abusive relationship. So I don't even use, I have some women I've worked with for a year. After a year, they can finally say, I was emotionally abused. I was verbally abused. I was financially abused. I had no control over one thing of money. I was given a couple $100 a month and that's all I had. No name on any bank accounts, no name on cars, no name on the mortgage. So really, as I mentioned before, it's understanding the truth first
Mm-hmm.
and what they are actually in, and then understanding tools of how to deal with what they're in. Like if they're still living with the person, gray rocking is so key,
What'd you say?
right?
Repeat that.
It's becoming awareness of what they're in and then learning the tools first if they're still living with the person.
Right.
Gray rocking is huge.
What does
Gray
that mean?
rocking, it's just like you see a gray rock, it's kind of boring.
Oh, gray
So
rock.
so
Gray rock.
when you're with a someone with a lot of these traits, you don't want to give them. So it's a lot of talking the weather. If you give them anything that feels great about you, they'll knock it down. If they give anything, how they got into your heart is they learned everything of your sensitivity. If you give anything that's emotional, they're going to find a way to use it. Like, if you have troubles with your mom, for example, you're just like your mom, right? Or they're going to use it, right? So gray rocking is a huge technique to be able to keep the ball in your court and not giving them the power of totally walking all over you. There's soul distancing. Soul distancing is really don't open up yourself emotionally. The people that you trust and love, you can open them up and allow them to come into your soul and do that. These are some practical tools. It's when they text, when you're in these relationships, you text right back because, oh my gosh, if I don't, they're going to explode. They're going to get mad. They're going to chew me apart. First, give it 15 minutes before you text back. Give it a half hour. Give it an hour. It's creating space. The number one tool is going no contact so you can really heal. Some I think it was even Dr. Ramani even says you need a 30 days of no contact to really allow your body to regulate, your nervous system to regulate after them because it's been so deregulated and so beaten up, right? So we need to work on this stuff first and setting boundaries. It's really hard for somebody in that situation just to walk out. The control and the manipulation. I've had very few that do, and the ones that do, they're back there the next week or the next day. So there's a lot that we have to learn in setting up, and then it's also self-trust. We have allowed all of our self-trust and work to be taken away. So it's building that up again and building up that, getting security. It's also having a network of support system to give you to go. Right. So really getting a plan, there's a lot of things you need to work on. And then once you get that, then start getting a safety plan. Do you have money? If you've been financially abused and you've had zero access to money, you have nothing. That gives that narcissistic person 100% control over you. If you have 3 kids, been married for 30 years, what do you do? Right. So it's building up a plan. How do I start saving money so I can? Because I can tell you this right now. The thing that's really hard, I just got off of the phone with a client on an emergency call before this, and her she's been going through a divorce 2 years with somebody that's extremely narcissistic, extreme financial abuse, 3 kids, and she can barely even get money from the court systems, and he has multi millions. And the way the system's set up, and she's living off of hardly anything. She is separated, but even fighting that. So a lot of times our court systems aren't even where we need, so there's some fairness until the divorce is finalized. It's really rough what some people have to go through. In some people, because of that situation, they're stuck. And so, and then if they're stuck, they learn to find new passions in life, how to gray rock and how to exist, so they're a lot happier. But some feel so stuck if they can't go anywhere. And let's say they're 60 years old and they haven't worked for 20 some years because their job, they both agreed one of us is going to stay home. So it's better for the children.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of, it's hard for safety plans. There's a lot of planning that needs to go in.
Would you say your average client age? What's your average? Because that's going to lead me to my next question. The women coming to see you, what's their age? Are they Gen X's? Average, on average.
I have all across the board. I have 28-year-old girls that can't break free and in extremely toxic relationships, and they've been in it for 3 years and they can't get out. I have 33-year-olds. I have all age groups. My least age group that I have is probably in the 40s right now, but it could also be if they have kids. Life is crazy in the 40s, right? With sports and everything happening. But I go from mid 60s. My youngest client is 21. And she had toxic relationships when she was in high school, and abusive relationships, a pattern she learned having a toxic father. So it's across the board.
It is. Sounds like it is.
Yeah, it is.
Would you say that? All right. Here's the next question. Now, you have friends outside in your circle, in your close circle, who are not involved in narcissistic relationships.
Yep.
Fair?
Yeah.
Okay. Could you, and again, not pinpointing, but as a generalization, what type of woman is not going to fall for that or put up with that?
Because I can tell you, I have some clients that are like head of companies, strong as anything, confident women. But when it comes to romantic relationships, that's where they become and they let go of their worth, right? So I can't say, a narcissist goes after strong women. They go after people that are successful. They go after that. What I would say is a common trait is people that are highly sensitive, have an emotional, have extreme empathy for other people, are caring, compassionate, loving. Those are the targets.
Right.
Right. And so if you have somebody that isn't as empathetic, they aren't going to give somebody a second chance, right? They're going to be like, hell no, I'm not going to put up with that.
Right.
Right. So I would say that my clients from 21 to 60 some, they are just really beautiful, golden hearted people that, are very sensitive to other people's feelings, have them, that's probably across the board. And it doesn't mean they aren't weak at all.
Right.
It's in the romantic relationship. And it's not only romantic, because I work with clients that had toxic boss, abusive mother, abusive father. So it's across the board. It's not just romantic. It's your friends can be, you could have narcissistic friends that you put up with, right? I have some friends I love to death, but I might just walk with them only once a week because once a week is enough for me. Right. But I still have fun. But more than once a week, I'd probably be drained by them.
I gotcha. So would you say good guys are boring to a lot of these women who are involved? I mean, let's call it go back to gray rocking. So the guy who's not out, not love bombing, not showering, not manipulating. So let's say that guy got his shit together. He knows he's content with who he is, just not overindulgent with these women, does that from a woman's point of view come off as boring?
Well, I think once we learn what a loving relationship should be, then that's the guy that's the most beautiful guy to be with. And until we learn that the people that over love bomb, that is not true real love, right? And
Mhm.
we don't accept that love bombing, because overdoing it, that's not love. That's just to try to, that's manipulation,
It's
right?
it's big time.
But to me, until we learn that love bombing is not really love, it's really manipulation, and they make us feel wow, it's part of what we need to relearn as what real love is. Because to me, somebody that's loving and caring and steady and consistent, that's the best type of person, whether it's a friend, anything to be with, because that's what a true love is, because you can open up and trust, right?
Yeah, I had Dr.
So I know I kind of gave a little twist on
No,
that.
that's good. You're
It's the other it's the people that come out and they wow us, that it's a false image they're giving us of the mask that they have on of what's really true.
what's coming next. What they're trying
Yeah.
to, what they're not revealing what's underneath the surface. Dr. Daniel Lieberman was on
Mhm.
last week. He's the author of The Molecule of More. Amazing book, all about dopamine,
Oh,
the dopaminergic person. Have you heard of him?
ah, that's great. Yeah.
It's a great book. And,
Mhm.
and he was saying, obviously, dopamine is a drug of the future. In other words, it's for future pleasure. We never really achieve it, just the next thing.
Right.
So if that narcissistic behavior is a dopamine rush,
Hmm.
then are there traits of other addictive patterns with a person like that? In other words, shopping, eating, overindulging in other areas, not just with that relationship?
You mean the person that's narcissistic?
No, the other one.
The other one? Um, I'm not sure. There could be. I think that hit of dopamine is, we live in a society now, everything's instant gratification, right?
Right.
Social media, instant answering, text, instant answering. And so when we get that dopamine, we're shooting for that instant gratification, where we need to do a mind shift. We want long-term gratification, right?
Mhm.
Um, but going back into it, narcissistic people, I'm going to start there first. A lot of them can have, porn addiction, alcohol addiction. You can see traits that comes with it. Not all of them,
Mhm.
but the person with a lot of empathy, and I'll call it the target, because I don't like to say victim, because
Mhm.
they're way more. We aren't victims. We aren't in victim mode, right? I don't want to push somebody. We're the target. Just like anybody else, they could have some addiction and things like that. But I think a lot of it goes to, do you have childhood trauma that you get pulled into it? Do you have, extreme sensitivity? Some people are just, when I was younger, a kid, I was extremely sensitive. Try to save every little animal. If I found a hurt, whatever, I'd bring everything home, right? It's just that compassion, that sensitivity. And when you have, that, it's easier to get taken advantage of, until you learn that your sensitivity isn't a weakness, it's really a strength, but you need to learn how to work through it and not give it in to somebody, right? There's
Yeah.
a process that we got to learn on that too. So, with that hand in hand, I would almost say the addictions is probably more on the narcissistic side,
Mhm.
from the stuff at research and things I've read,
Mhm.
um, from that part.
Are you? So I have some notes here for you. So you said that
Sure.
when you were a kid. So you have. So you mentioned toxic relationships since childhood. For you personally, correct?
Well, romantic relationships. My girlfriend relationships have always been fantastic, and working relationships and stuff like that. More men,
Hmm.
but it's what I learned from my father, my first man in my life.
And when did you realize when you got involved romantically that you started seeing? Okay, wait a minute. I'm repeating. I'm seeing things here that I saw as a kid. That toxicity.
Oh, many, many, not. I went through my teens, my 20s, my 30s, probably realization in my 40s. It
Hmm.
doesn't mean that I didn't realize it, but I didn't understand it. There just wasn't talk. I'm almost 60 years old. There just wasn't talk about that, right?
Mhm.
And so, and I know that I was always getting in these relationships. And then you start feeling, well, maybe it's me. Maybe something's wrong with me. Maybe it's me that's creating it, right? And when I was younger, I didn't really learn that I was just repeating and dating the same type of person. And then once in a while, I dated a really sweet, nice guy, and it would feel awkward,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I was going to say.
And yeah, and it felt awkward. I would date somebody that was real sweet, nice, have a good relationship, and it just felt so uncomfortable because chaos and unhealthy male relationships and abuse. My dad was very, very verbally abusive. He was an alcoholic. He had his rages. That intensity was just living in fear, right?
Yeah.
And so when you try to get into something that was healthy for you, I didn't understand that. And that's why I do what I do, because if I can help one person understand what's good for their well-being,
Hmm.
and then they find out what is really good, because only they know. I can only help, by teaching or working on things, but they really will find out what's right for them. That's a beautiful thing. That's my passion in life now.
You made it your passion. See, a lot of
Yeah, it's my
every
passion.
sharing
Mm.
this, what you learned to help somebody else prevent them, hopefully,
Oh,
from going back.
yeah.
Do you beat your head against the wall as a life coach when you're sharing your life story? You're giving them the checklist. You're telling them everything they ought to be looking for, and they come to you after years and years and still have not done anything to get out of that situation. How do you, I was a fitness trainer for many
Mm-hmm.
years. Okay. And my clients come to me and I gave my all. I did a national physique transformation competition years ago, placed top, I know what it takes to get there. So then I
Mm-hmm.
became a trainer. And then I have a long list of clients, but they don't have the same dedication. They want the results, but not willing to go do the work that it takes to get the results. So after a while, it got frustrating. So as a life coach, they're coming to you. You're saying, here's the science. Here's what you do. You're giving a blueprint how to either avoid it, get out of it, right? And they're not listening. How do you deal with that?
You know what? They're human. And we all go through times in life. It's always our responsibility to
Hmm.
change. Nobody can make us change, right?
No.
It's our accountability, our responsibility. And if they aren't ready for it yet, um, then we work on what's holding you back. What is your struggle that's hard for you to take that first step? And let's forget about the big picture right now. What do you need immediately in this present moment? And try to turn in. And sometimes it's simple steps. They are so. I have some clients that have psychiatrists. They work with psychiatrists and they work with me, and sometimes they are lost themselves so much that just getting up and taking a shower, that's a huge accomplishment. So sometimes we have to go backwards, and I don't get frustrated where they're at because I understand. And we have to make it smaller steps and then figure out what's the first step. And let's just do that. And if you achieve that, then let's go from there.
Hmm.
Because a lot of times when I'm working with people, they get it logically. I have some people in trauma bonding, they get it. They say everything, they have the truth list, they have all that.
Right.
And they're like, I don't understand why I got pulled back, in and why I'm with him again. And I'm like, well, let's go back and let's make a simple step. And so we break it down to smaller successes, because when we do the smaller successes, those are sometimes the most painful and hard to do
Hmm.
and to become a new healthy pattern for us. They lead us to epic results. And so sometimes, and then getting them into the present. What do you need right now?
Right.
Well, I'm overwhelmed. And I'm like, well, let's go down. What's making you overwhelmed? I don't know. Well, to take them back and just break it down for them to really realize what's going on. It's hard.
It is, no,
We're human.
they're human beings. Exactly.
Yeah.
Some of the things that they come to you and what's justification look like? Well, he's not that bad. Share some ideas what they're saying to justify the situation they're in rather than to rectify the situation.
Um, you get, I think a common one is, well, he's not always mean. right? And the whole thing from any research you do, it's not that they're always mean. Everybody has a bad day, right?
Sure.
I mean, we're human. But it's when the bad day turns into a pattern, that your pattern is 60% of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And that pattern of meanness is abusive, of cutting you down, blaming you, and doing that. That's an abusive relationship. So sometimes it's really hard that, I hear, I'm so mad that I stayed in this. And I'm like, be gentle on yourself. You didn't know. You did the best you could for 20 years, giving your kids, the healthiest you could in the situation you're at. You fought so hard and did the best. And now you're becoming aware. There's nothing you can do about the past. Byron Katie has a great book, Loving What Is.
Yeah.
In that book, she went through a hard life. In that book, one thing that stands out is when we fight with our past and we try to change it, we'll lose 100% of the time because that was our reality.
Yeah.
When we accept our past, it is what it is because it happened. Doesn't mean we have to agree with it, but it happened. It allows us to move a little bit forward, right? And also in our future, we can't control. We can plan for a wedding, but today we can't change we can't control what's going to happen from a year from now. We can only control this present moment. So when you're stuck in that and you're beating yourself up, you've gotten this far. Like, look at how far you've grown and how aware you are. And now you're working to find what you're passionate in life. What do you like in life? How do you care for yourself? How do you hold on to your worth? How do you make self-care your priority and finally put yourself first, probably for decades, or even, and if you're in a relationship for a year, put yourself first in that whole year. Right? So it's a lot of working towards that and trying to live in the present. If we all lived in the present more, we'd be in a much happier state of mind.
The self-love, if self-love is somebody's foundation, I mean, the bedrock of this is solid. I mean, they love who they are.
Exactly.
Right? They're content with who they are. They're fulfilled. Now they're going into relationship to not complete, but to be compatible with that other person. Not
exactly.
Right? Not looking to be fulfilled, not expecting that person to complete them, but let's complement each other. That's healthy. So
it's very healthy.
Right. So you have the guy that comes to you. Have you ever had a guy come to you and say, look it, Kerry, I'm a fucking narcissist. I can't stand the way I'm treating my wife. I want to work on myself. There's some things I recognize, some old patterns that I realize I'm hurting this person. I need help. Do you have that guy in your chair?
I don't have, I never have. One thing you hear a lot is somebody that is highly narcissistic. They don't think anything's wrong with them.
Sure.
So to get them and to diagnose somebody with narcissistic personality disorder doesn't happen as frequently as it needs to because they don't think anything's wrong with them.
Right.
So that's why working with their partner is so important, because once we can learn to truly love ourselves, and everything you said was just beautiful, but to accept our strengths, weaknesses, everything in between, we aren't going to give our worth away. Everybody is worthy. The only time we lose our worth is when we give it away to somebody, right?
Yeah.
And when we can learn and we hold on to our worth and we know that we're important and we can really focus on ourselves, we really have more to give to people.
1,000%.
At a great place, too, while we're giving it.
1,000%. Before I forget, I have this. What's the one truth about healing? What's the one truth about healing that most people are not ready to hear?
Healing takes time. There's a lot of up and downs. I think sometimes what I see with clients that I remind them, they're doing great. They're doing great. They've made such progress. We're so proud. I'm so proud of them. And then I get a text and then they say, I am so triggered right now. I just had the biggest setback and I feel like I'm at day one. And I'm like, well, let's talk about it. And setbacks are normal. Okay. We all get through setbacks through healing, and setbacks can feel horrible. But what I say about setbacks, let's look at it as a redirection. And when we look at it as a redirection, there's some part that we haven't healed yet that we're not aware of. And sometimes in healing, we can feel good, and then we didn't even realize that part of our heart was still hurting, or there was something that was abusive that we didn't even remember. Because remember, when we're in these abusive relationships, our amygdala takes over,
Right.
increase, and our front lobe is kind of shut down, and it blocks out a lot of stuff. So when we heal, we need to feel again, and sometimes that hurts. Feeling sometimes hurts when we've been numb for a lot of years.
Sure. And is it possible to love somebody, still walk away, who abused you emotionally? I have love for you, just cannot be with you.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times people can be. I love that person. I was married, even though they're abusive. I was married. We're humans. I was married 30 years. He was the father of my children. We had some good times. We had a lot of life together. It doesn't mean they're healthy for you. It
Right.
doesn't mean you like to be around them. It doesn't mean you have to accept their bad behavior. But another thing in healing is it's important to understand we can have anger, sadness, and feel love all at the same time, right?
Hmm.
We can. That's what it can be so confusing, confusing because we can have so many different feelings that go on simultaneously.
I would love to have the guy who admits, like the alcohol, like
Hmm.
alcoholic, like AA,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Oh,
You go
yeah.
to AA. Hey, I'm so and so. I'm an alcoholic. How about I am so and so. I'm a narcissist. Let's have that person on the show, on here, to talk about it, to help these other guys out, because I know they're out there.
I agree.
I know there's guys out there who have gone through it and said, "Fuck, I can't do this anymore. I cannot allow myself to be around somebody and be intoxicated and so abusive." So that person, if you're out there listening, if you know somebody, I'm inviting them in, not to beat them up, but to share, to just
Well,
openly share.
I wish I remembered the name because I was just looking that up on TikTok the other day, and and I went through and I listened to about 30 different to understand how their brain is wired,
Hmm.
because their brain is wired a lot differently. They don't have the empathy, they don't have different things. So it is wired, but just the perspective of how they're always on the defense. It's hard because what I do hear a lot from from the women that I work with is that I just don't understand how he could be so mean,
Hmm.
or how she could be so mean, and how they could be so ruthless and don't care. And especially the ones that are malignant. I mean, it's scary, the rages and what comes out, and it's just scary. So it's hard to understand how somebody can be wired that way.
Sure, it is. And let's talk about you for a second.
Yes,
You're not married.
I am married.
You are married. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So, first husband,
Second husband.
second husband.
Mm-hmm.
First husband was a narcissist.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Second
Yes.
husband. So when okay, this is a good question. So you left the first one. You guys split.
Hmm.
You're going
Very young.
very
Hmm.
young, and now you're. How long before you got involved again after going through everything you've been through? Weren't you gun shy? Like, hold on a second, I got to slow down here and regroup and get to know myself before I get involved with somebody else again. What was the process, Kerry?
The healthiest thing of healing is to take a lot of years and find yourself, and to repair until you understand, so you get into healthy relationships. And so I got married later in my 30s. I had kids 34, 36, versus 21, 22, right out of college. And so that was a big learning experience, because I finally in life focused on me, and focus on what's my priorities, and putting myself first, and grounding myself, setting boundaries, understanding what I tolerated in the past, of what I don't tolerate anymore.
Hmm.
And it doesn't mean being mean. It's just, no, that's not right. You know,
Yeah,
it's just, that's not for me. And sometimes, you date other people, right? And when you do, it's okay. If you're not in line with each other, it just wasn't meant to be. That's
sure.
totally fine. Just like if I wasn't right for somebody else, that's okay.
It's okay.
Not everybody. Yeah. And I think that's important. Instead of taking it as a rejection, I think it's important to just understand, if somebody's not aligned with your values and what's important to you, then it's okay. You aren't meant to be together.
What did
It's
that?
as simple as that.
It is. It's easier. A lot of times, it's easier said than done. What
I
did
mean, it's simple when you think of it that way.
simple but not
Hmm.
easy, right? So the
It's
marriage,
not easy,
the
but it's
first.
simple when you
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, no, no. I wasn't going to say anything. Go ahead.
The first marriage lasted how long?
A year.
You say 1 year or 8 years?
Very short.
Oh, 1 year.
1 year.
1 year. Okay. And then the time after you got out, you're back in the dating game again, correct?
I didn't want to date right away though, because the last thing I wanted to do is be with anybody.
Right. I would say you probably got.
Personally,
Okay.
I didn't. I was just like, I need my independence. I need my girlfriends. I just need to, yeah. So it was kind of like I didn't even want to go on a date.
And how long did that last for before you actually got back in the game?
Probably a good year and a half.
Okay.
I mean, we would go out, my girlfriends and I, and we'd go out and we would talk on stuff, and I'd be asked out on dates. I just wasn't ready.
Sure. Understandably
If I
so.
wasn't ready, it just wasn't, yeah.
So did you?
So it's important, I think, when people are in these, it's important to heal and to get grounded, to find yourself. And also, you really need to ask yourself, what do you value in life? What do you want? Right?
Mhm.
Because we lose that in these relationships until you fully understand. Getting right back in a relationship, you can fall back into your old patterns because we do patterns that aren't healthy for us too, right? Being a people pleaser, saying yes, giving in, not having a voice, being okay, not being heard. We want to make sure when we go into another relationship, we aren't repeating it because that's what we did. That's what I did. And that is on me and my responsibility for me to change. And I'm accountable for my reactions and my responses.
Right. So that was my next question. So after you got divorced, took your time to self-discovery, started getting back in the game. Are you saying you found yourself almost getting back into another toxic relationship?
I did start dating some people, and after they did a few things that were very toxic, I was much better cutting them off. Just nope. There were a few, and I know my personality, I can be kind of soft. I can be very so that might be a little bit more appealing to take advantage of at times. So I did do that. And, I even had one back in those days, and I was in New York City, we'd get the paper phone bills and it'd have every single number.
Mm-hmm.
I even had one steal my phone bill and kind of call people to figure out who I was calling. I'm like, just ask. But I mean, once I figured that out, I was like, bye bye.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's no way. Right.
Right.
But I was still learning. I was only in my 20s. I was still learning.
Sure.
So, but I was a little bit more cutthroat, and I don't think, and it's not even cutthroat because that's not a good word for it. I was doing what's right for me and standing up for what was right, and just not going to put up with it.
Right.
So it did. It took a while, but I think that's okay.
Part of
Because
the
we got to
process.
do everything. At that time, I had a lot of friends having kids, and they were all doing that. And a lot of my friends had kids in the 20s, and I didn't have kids until my mid 30s. And one thing I accepted is that we're all on our own timeline. It just doesn't matter. What's right for one person doesn't mean it's right for me. And going on, and that's really important because sometimes I feel that. Just in society, we lived under society pressures. Get married, have kids, get a house, that.
Mm-hmm.
And if it doesn't work for you, that's okay. And that's all part of self-love, is just really tying in what you're comfortable with and accepting it. It's fine.
Right. So then you have this period of time back in the dating game. When did you meet current husband? How long was it? How long was it before after your divorce to you actually say yes again? How many? I think it was.
Geez. I'm thinking would have been married for 30 years. So it was probably like 4 years.
4
4 years,
years.
5. afterwards? I'm giving estimates.
Sure. No,
We're
no,
going
no.
back in time.
There's no. It's not a quiz.
I know. I know. I'm like, I'm going back into times.
Yeah. So why
Mhm.
did you okay, why did you say yes to the current husband? What was it about him they said, "Okay, I think this is my soulmate. I think this is who I'm going to spend the rest of my life with." What was it that said, why wasn't he gray rocked? Why wasn't he boring compared to everything you've been through? Did you say, "Fuck, I had enough of what I've been through. This is a breath of fresh air. This guy's got his act together. He knows who he is. I trust him. I feel good with." What was it that attracted you to the current husband now?
It's compatibility, trust, similar goals, wanting to do a lot of the same things in life. Wanting to get out of the Northeast and go down south to a slower pace, which
Mhm.
I loved. I think it's really important to be your own individual, but I think it's also important to have a lot of things that you enjoy common together.
Sure.
Like hiking. I was the one that was a jock into sports.
Mhm.
He isn't as much, which is fine, but that's my outlet. Where I could go play on my softball teams and do different things like that. I think keeping my independence while I was in a relationship is very important, in keeping who I am. Because I think what happens in toxic relationships, we lose our identity.
Sure.
And so in a healthy relationship, it's so important to be who you are and to be accepted for who you are. And that's just really key for a long-term happy relationship. Doesn't mean you don't have up and downs. You get kids come along, it gets stressful, you're both working a lot. I was working tons and different things. You get, it's just regular life stresses happen.
Sure. Were you his second marriage or were you his first marriage?
First marriage.
So
Hmm.
when you did he have to handle you with kid gloves in the beginning? Like, okay, I know you've been through a lot, and was there trust issues going into it with him saying, "Well, I was burned so bad the last time, and I almost got involved with somebody else who was like that, and I got to kind of feel you out a little bit." And is that how it was?
I Well, yeah, I think in any coming after a toxic relationship,
Hmm.
I think we're all on extra protective mode and have a shield.
Sure.
And so it's really allowing yourself, and it takes time, bit by bit, to be vulnerable, to break down, to allow somebody in, and to trust that person.
Hmm.
So I think when you have somebody coming out of a toxic relationship, you do need to be a little bit more cautious. If there are things that could still trigger them, it's being aware, but it's respecting that. It's not using it against them. If they use it against you, then it's another toxic relationship, right? And I think in any relationship, it goes hand in hand. It's building the trust,
Right.
of even when you meet two people and they came from healthy relationships that didn't work, it's still figuring out, what's right. How do you communicate? What's important? And it's also having that loving and the respect and communication and honesty. I mean, there's such a big list, right? But I'm still going to go back of continuously accepting who that person is
Hmm.
and knowing you can't change that person. That's what's going to help for long-term relationships.
Yeah, you can't change a zebra stripes or spots on a
Can't.
leopard. You can't do that.
Mm-mm.
So I'm going to put myself in his current husband's place. I
Okay.
I have been in relationships where the woman just got out of a toxic relationship
Mhm.
and she didn't do the work. She
She
didn't
didn't
do
do
the
work.
work. So she's bringing
That's
her.
that's really hard to
It,
go
it
into.
didn't work.
That's
So
where a difference where I did the work.
right. That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. That's why I give you
Yeah.
props for doing the work because you could, by doing the
Mhm.
work, you make that next relationship work. Whereas
Yes.
they're leaving one, jumping out of one, jumping, coming with me. It's like, no, you're still not healed. I'm,
Yeah.
I'm legit.
Mhm.
I'm quality person. I'm not,
Mhm.
nobody's perfect, but
Nobody's
I have my act together. I know who I am, where I'm going. I've done the work. I've done the work. So when they're
Mhm.
coming in not doing the work, it'll never work.
Mhm.
You know?
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up because I do have clients that have gotten into the dating scene too fast for
Hmm.
them when they weren't ready. And they would have, oh my gosh, I reactively bursted on him, like, you're just like my ex, you're doing the same thing.
Right.
And I've gotten triggered because I thought they were doing a pattern just like, their ex-husband did, that was so hurtful and abusive. And so they are on defense right
Yes.
away. And for somebody that's healthy, not doing something wrong, that's not fair to them either.
Right.
So I'm glad you mentioned that, because if you don't do the work, and it's a lot of work. It's not easy work.
No.
It's a lot of work sitting. It's a lot of work allowing you to break down. One thing that was a huge shocker for me is when I thought I'd be broken away, when I finally got my freedom, I was all excited to go out with friends, do this, I'm going to live, I can't wait, pumped up.
Yeah.
In my first week, I could barely move out of bed.
Wow.
And I was like, what's going on? And what I learned is that we're so, deregulated, our nervous system, and we're so exhausted, and we've been living in hypervigilant or hyper extra energy and go, 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 that when we finally have that safety, because that person's not around, we just completely, our nervous system breaks down. And so, feeling in some people, I don't know, I can't remember the clinical term for it. It's not really a depression. It's like a mental breakdown. It's like a mental exhaustion,
Right.
or a nervous system overload, that you finally feel safe, that your body is just so broken down that it just needs to sleep, and it needs to cry, and it can't move. And that was a huge shock for me. And that's happened to, some of my clients too, that they just thought they would feel so relieved. And some do feel relieved. But I found the ones living on autopilot for a long time, really, it takes a while to get back running, because they got to regulate and feel better to get, functional again.
Let's switch gears for a minute.
Sure.
I know you got to wrap up. You have your next client coming in. So let's switching gears a little bit. What is it with male bashing that women feel superior? Let's, completely switching the conversation a little bit here. My son has friends, and some of the mothers, there's people in our family who I recognize the women feel good when they can, bash the husband in front of people and put him down a little bit to make themselves feel better. Is that's not narcissistic? What do you call that?
My group of friends, we don't do that. We might have a time, if somebody has a bad, we might talk about a situation.
Sure.
But we never we don't do the male bashing. To me, I don't, that one's a hard one to answer.
I have my own opinion. I have my own opinions. I want to see how accurate I am.
I need to know the situation better. You know what I mean? Sometimes it could be from insecurity. Sometimes it can be for them to feel better. Sometimes it could be maybe they got problems in their own relationship, and this is a way of venting. Sometimes it's, I wouldn't say it's necessarily narcissistic, because I'd really have to understand the people in the situation. Sometimes it's that society thing. Oh, I'm going to jump it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to play along. You know what I mean? Into bash, that gets carried away, and then it gets kind of ugly.
Yeah. I know from experiences. I have zero tolerance for it. But
I have. That's with me too. I would have I'd shut it right down.
It's not going to happen. But I have seen it in my extended family. I see it in my son's circle of friends, and I recognize it, and I see it as complete insecurity. In other words, nobody who's content with themselves, feels good about themselves and has self-love is going to put somebody else down to make themselves feel better, blow out their candle to make theirs look brighter. We've heard that expression. So.
Yeah,
anyway.
I agree with that, because whenever anybody puts somebody else down, they're only, I agree with you. It's just to make them feel better.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And it's, my whole thing when my kids are little, if you can't say something nice, don't say it at all. I don't really, you know what I mean?
Zip it, right?
It's, unless it's something you need to talk about, that's, we got to work through. But if it's just like, he's this and he's that, I don't want to hear it.
Not going to happen.
Yeah, it's just not.
Kerry, where can they find you? You have a lot of good information. Where can they find you as far as you said you want to get more on TikTok, but right now you're on IG. Tell them how they can find you.
I'm on Instagram, Kerry Life Coach. I got a website, which is www.kerryrasenberger.com. I do have a Facebook page. I'm trying to grow my TikTok, which I'm going to be probably focusing on a little more.
Yep.
And on my website, if you have a question, or even on Instagram, DM me and I get back to you. I probably respond a little bit faster if it's through an email. I get so many DMs a day. Sometimes with my clients and doing everything else, sometimes it can take me a few days to get back to DMs.
And
on
are you
Instagram.
all virtual? Everything you do is virtual?
Everything I do is virtual. We could do FaceTime. Sometimes my clients want to go for a walk, so they can go for a walk and do it. If I have local clients, I would do, if they want to do a walk and do a session. I really believe nature is a great healing.
Sure.
So I'm all for that. Yep, but I'm pretty much all virtual unless it's somebody local.
What's the best, as we wrap this up, bring this in for a landing, what's the best thing about being you right now at this time in your life?
I think the best thing is the inner peace I found.
Yeah.
And it's the best years that I have. I'm going into my 60s. And to have the inner peace and be so comfortable in my skin, I hope everybody can achieve that in life, because true happiness comes from within. And when we have the true happiness, we choose things that we're passionate about that even makes us feel better. And that's why I love life coaching so much, because I get so much from it. Helping others gives me a lot of joy.
I can tell. There's energy comes through the screen here, talking with you, hearing you, listening to your voice. It's not just your words, it's a feeling. And you're doing something that's improving people's lives, and you can't put a price on that. And you are meant to do this, Kerry.
I was meant to do it.
That's right.
I love it. I just got goosebumps when they said that.
You did a great job. So thank you for sharing your time with us
Thank
today.
you.
I know people are going to see this, and they're going to want to reach out to you. So it's Kerry Rasenberger, right?
Yes.
Is it Kerry Rasenberger Life Coach, the website?
It's just yes, the website is Kerry. It's not Life Coach. It's just kerryrasenberger.com.
There you go. You got
But if
it.
they type in Kerry Life Coach, you'll get either
Yeah,
option to click on.
they'll find you.
Thanks. So
All right.
have an awesome day. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Love what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
And
I appreciate that.
and thanks again.
All right.
Appreciate it.
All right, Kerry. Enjoy.
Bye.
Have a great day. I'll see you
You
guys.
too.
Be fucking bold.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.